Flower of Empires, Bengal, British India, 1797. If you look at a poppy field from a distance, it barely raises any alarm. Quite the opposite. In spring, it seems remarkably beautiful. Thousands of white, pink, and lilac flowers sway slowly in the hot wind. Butterflies flutter above them. Farmers work between the rows of plants. Children run barefoot on the dry earth. Nothing in this picture hints that this is where a commodity is being born that will soon break the largest empire in Asia. Eastern India, Bengal, one of the most fertile plains in the world. Just a few decades ago, local peasants grew rice, wheat, legumes, sugarcane. Now everything has changed. The British East India Company decided that this land should yield a different crop, the opium poppy, an empire that didn't need colonies. Until it did, unlike Spain or Portugal, Britain did not build its power on gold alone. It built it on trade, and trade required goods, many goods, spices, cotton, tea, silk, and now, opium. After the Battle of Plassey in 1757, the East India Company effectively became the master of Bengal. Formally, local rulers still existed here. Formally, India was not a British colony in the modern sense, but real power increasingly passed to the company's directors. It was they who decided what would be grown, how much would be paid, to whom it would be sold, and what would be done with the harvest, a contract almost impossible to refuse. One morning, a company representative arrives at an Indian village. He is accompanied by an interpreter, guards, a clerk. He gathers the village elders. A contract is laid before them. At first glance, everything looks fair. The company provides seed, lends money, guarantees to buy back the harvest. All the farmer has to do is grow the poppy. But there is one problem. The price is not set by the farmer, nor even by the market. The price is set by the company itself. Many peasants very quickly realize they have fallen into a trap. They have already received the advance. So, they must plant poppy. If the harvest is poor, the debt remains. The following year they must take a new advance and plant even more poppy. Within a few years, many families can no longer return to growing ordinary food. They work for only one crop, for one commodity, for one market. The birth of the black gold of the 19th century. When spring comes, the fields are covered in flowers. A few weeks later, the petals fall. Green seed pods remain. These contain the most valuable part. The farmer takes a small knife, slowly makes several shallow incisions. No more. If cut too deep, the plant will die. If too shallow, there will be too little sap. This craft has been passed down through generations. By morning, a thick white sap begins to seep from the incisions. Under the sun, it darkens, turns brown, gradually turns into a sticky resin. The next day, it is carefully scraped off with a special spatula. This dark mass is raw opium. Each pod yields very little, so thousands of people repeat the same work day after day. Incision, waiting, collection, incision again, and so on for months. The factory. After the harvest, the raw opium is sent to special factories. One of the largest is located near Patna. From the outside, it looks almost like an ordinary large warehouse. But inside, hundreds of people work. The air is heavy, thick, saturated with a distinctive Swedish smell. Workers knead the dark mass barefoot, remove impurities, mix different batches, add ingredients to make the consistency uniform. Then the opium is formed into large round cakes. Each one is wrapped in poppy leaves, covered with a protective shell, dried, weighed, inspected, marked. The quality must be consistent, because ahead lies the most expensive auction in the world. Calcutta. Every few weeks an event takes place in Calcutta that every major merchant in Asia knows about. The East India Company's auction. A huge warehouse, dozens of wooden crates, each one marked with a lot number, weight, place of production, representatives of British trading houses, American captains, Parsi merchants, Indian intermediaries, all silently inspect the goods. No one yet knows who will buy this particular lot, but everyone knows where it will ultimately end up. China. The auctioneer's hammer sounds. Bidding begins. The price rises quickly. Each new lot sells for more. Demand is fierce, because the profit is even greater. A merchant who buys a few dozen crates today may earn a fortune within a few months, provided his ship successfully reaches the Chinese coast. One little secret. Officially, the British East India Company did not sell opium to the Chinese. Formally, it sold it to private traders in India. They were the ones who transported the cargo further. They were the ones who negotiated with Chinese smugglers. They were the ones who broke Chinese law. This legal scheme was extremely convenient. If the Chinese government raised objections, the British government could reply, "This is not us. This is private trade." But without the East India Company, this entire system simply could not exist. It was the company that controlled production, the company that controlled the auctions, the company that reaped the enormous profit. At the end of the day, the last ship leaves Calcutta's harbor. Its holds are nearly full. Wooden crates stand in rows. There is no label reading China on them yet. But every member of the crew knows the route. Ahead lies the Strait of Malacca, the South China Sea, and the coast of an empire that doesn't even suspect that the greatest economic attack in its history has already begun. The only door to China Canton, Guangzhou, around 1800. At dawn, the Pearl River is almost still. Only a light morning mist glides over its surface. The splash of oars can be heard from a distance. Fishing boats slowly return to shore after a night's work. On the horizon, dark silhouettes of large ocean-going ships appear. Tall masts, furled sails, flags of various nations. They stand at anchor and wait patiently for permission. They have all come here for one reason: to reach China. But China was unlike other countries. No captain could simply sail into port. No foreign merchant could freely walk the city. No European diplomat had the right to demand a meeting with local authorities. There was only one place where the world could trade with the Celestial Empire: Canton, modern Guangzhou, the only official gateway to the richest empire on earth, a city that lived by its own rules. Canton was already one of the largest trading centers in Asia. Its narrow streets were packed with people. Markets sold tea, spices, fabrics, paper, porcelain, and jade goods. The air was thick with the scents of sandalwood, fried fish, ginger, and jasmine tea. Vendors' cries mixed with the sound of bells on horse carts. The port worked almost around the clock. Yet for most foreigners, this world remained inaccessible. As soon as a European ship received permission to trade, its crew learned of a long list of rules. They could not bring weapons ashore, could not bring their families, could not remain in Canton after the trading season ended, could not move freely around the city, could not study the Chinese language without special permission, could not even freely communicate with local residents. Any violation could mean expulsion or a complete trading ban. For the Chinese authorities, these rules were natural. For Europeans, humiliating. The 13 factories. All foreign traders lived in a small quarter by the river. It was called the factories, or the 13 factories. In reality, it was a complex of warehouses, offices, and residential buildings. Every major trading company had its own premises here. The British, Americans, French, Dutch, Danes, Swedes, they all lived almost side by side. But this was no ordinary town. It was a kind of isolated zone. After sunset, the gates closed. Foreigners were not allowed to leave without permission. Chinese guards watched every movement closely. For many Europeans, this felt like living in a large hotel they could never leave. The Hong merchants. The British often believed they were negotiating with the Chinese government. In reality, there was another crucial link between them: merchants known as the Hong. They were the only people officially permitted to trade with foreigners. They were the ones who bought tea, the ones who sold silk, the ones who handled the paperwork, the ones who answered to the authorities for foreigners' conduct. If a British captain broke the rules, punishment could fall not only on him, but also on the Chinese merchant who worked with him. This system gave the imperial government almost total control over international trade, and it worked for decades. Two civilizations, two philosophies. This is where the greatest misunderstandings began. For a British merchant, trade was an agreement between two equal parties. If both sides profited, then the deal was fair. For a Chinese official, the situation looked completely different. Trade was not a right. It was a privilege the emperor granted to foreigners. This seemed like a small distinction, but this very difference in worldview would become one of the main causes of the coming conflict. When the British said, "We want more freedom to trade," Chinese officials heard, "We want you to abandon your own laws." And the answer was almost always the same. No, silver flows east. Despite all the restrictions, trade flourished. Every year, dozens of European ships arrived in Canton. They brought silver bullion, coins, and returned home loaded with tea, silk, and porcelain. In Chinese customs records, year after year, the same picture repeated. Silver flowed in, goods left the country. The balance was extremely favorable for the empire. Chinese officials saw no reason to change anything. On the contrary, they considered this system ideal, aboard a British ship. At the end of the trading season, the captain of a British vessel stood on the stern, looking at the shore. His holds were nearly full. Thousands of wooden crates of tea, hundreds of bolts of silk, crates of porcelain. The cargo was worth a fortune, and yet the captain was dissatisfied. He knew how much silver remained in China, knew that next year even more would have to be brought, and understood this could not go on forever. Somewhere there had to be a way to change the rules of the game. The emperor does not see the danger. At the same time, in Beijing, the imperial court paid almost no attention to what was happening in distant Canton. To officials, it was just one of many provinces. Trade, it brought in taxes. Foreigners behaved calmly. The system worked. No serious threat existed. Or so it seemed. No one yet suspected that at this very moment, beyond China's borders, a scheme was already being built that would soon overturn this entire system. A scheme in which silver would no longer flow into China. On the contrary, it would soon begin leaving the empire, and the cause would be a commodity officially banned under Chinese law. Empire of Smugglers. South China Sea, 1815 to 1825. If the South China Sea seemed calm by day, after sunset it turned into an entirely different world. The moon reflected on the dark water. The wind nearly died down. On the horizon, dozens of ships rocked, barely visible. They were in no hurry to reach Chinese ports, nor did they anchor at official customs piers. They waited, without flags, without unnecessary lights, without entries in port logs. This is where one of the largest smuggling networks of the 19th century was born, a trade that officially did not exist. On paper, everything looked simple. China had banned the import of opium back in the 18th century. The laws were clear. Selling it, a crime. Using it, a crime. Smuggling it, a crime. Officials regularly reported to the emperor that the fight continued. But in reality, the ban created what modern economists would call a perfect black market. Demand existed. Profit was enormous. Risk was high. And so there were always people willing to take the risk. Ships that were on no map. British trading vessels rarely entered Chinese ports with opium aboard. That was too dangerous. Instead, they anchored near islands or in bays beyond official control. Such vessels were called receiving ships, floating warehouses. Formally, they broke no Chinese laws. They stood in open water, and waited. After nightfall, small Chinese boats set out from the coast, without flags, without lanterns. Their crews knew the route well. They approached the British ships almost silently. Sailors quickly passed over wooden crates, money, documents, and within minutes the boats vanished again into the darkness. By dawn, the smuggled cargo was already on Chinese soil, without a single shot fired, without a single official declaration. Silver changes direction. At first, the scale was small, a few hundred crates, then a few thousand. Within a few years, tens of thousands. Along with it, the flow of silver changed too. No longer did British merchants bring precious metal into China. The opposite was now true. Chinese traders paid silver for opium. That silver then traveled to India. From there, it financed the purchase of tea, which again headed to Great Britain. The system was almost perfect. The very flow of silver that had drained the British economy for decades now worked in reverse. For London, this was a brilliant economic solution. For China, the beginning of a financial catastrophe. People who never met in this system, in a strange way, people who never saw one another were connected. A farmer in Bengal, a worker at the opium factory in Patna, an auctioneer in Calcutta, the captain of a British clipper, a smuggler in the South China Sea, a Chinese merchant in Canton, an official who looked the other way for silver coins, and a young Chinese man lighting an opium pipe for the first time. Each of them was just a small part of an enormous mechanism. Most did not even realize they were taking part in a process that was shifting the balance of power between two empires. The first smoking dens. In the narrow alleys of Canton, small establishments began to appear. From the outside, they looked almost like ordinary tea houses. Only those who knew the password or had connections could get inside. Silence reigned within. The light of a few oil lamps barely lit the room. Men lay on wooden couches. Long, elegant pipes lay beside them. The proprietor slowly heated a small ball of opium over a flame, then carefully applied it to the pipe's bowl. The visitor took several deep draws, closed his eyes. The room sank back into silence. In the early 19th century, such places were rare. Opium remained expensive. Only wealthy merchants, officials, or rich city dwellers could afford it. For most Chinese, it was still a curiosity, but prices gradually fell. Supply grew, and with it, the very structure of demand changed. Corruption. The imperial government knew full well that smuggling existed. The problem lay elsewhere. Many of those who were supposed to fight it were already profiting from it. Some customs officers took bribes. Certain military commanders warned smugglers of inspections. Local officials turned a blind eye to nighttime shipments. Sometimes even high-ranking officials invested money in the illegal trade through intermediaries. Corruption was nothing new for China. But now it began working in favor of the foreign trading system. That was far more dangerous. Alarming numbers. By the mid-1820s, financial officials in Beijing began noticing a strange trend. Silver reserves were shrinking. Coins in circulation were becoming scarcer. Tax revenues were increasingly delayed. At first, officials blamed poor harvests, then natural disasters, then speculators. Only later did it become clear that the cause was far larger. Silver was leaving the country with every new shipment of opium. The man who saw the danger, at a time when most officials argued over statistics and customs duties, one man began to view the problem quite differently. For him, this was not just about money, nor just about smuggling. He saw how Chinese society itself was changing, how young officials were starting to smoke opium, how soldiers spent their pay on the drug, how the machinery of state was gradually losing its discipline. His name was Lin Zexu, and very soon he would become the central figure in the fight against the opium trade. His decisions would change the history of China, and perhaps the history of the whole world.